The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. We are back with the classic music on this Thursday evening here on the Nerdcast Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. And this is going to be kind of a catch-all episode of the Nerdcast Empire. We are going to be talking all things nerdiness. Maybe not music so much. We have our special music show on the weekends. So this is going to be more about the anime, the video games, the pro wrestling, stuff that maybe we've gotten a little behind on our news for these topics. So today we're going to catch up on all of those things here on the Nerdcast Empire. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
Oh, man, it is going. Yeah, it's been a while since we've talked about a few of these topics, so it'll be good to jump in and kind of get caught up with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And joining us from Parts Unknown on this Thursday evening is Chris. Chris, how's it going?
Good to be back finally after many weeks away. Slowly getting my energy back after some long hours at work and lots of unnecessary time spent playing NCAA 25.
That is
so
not.
We're getting there.
That is not unnecessary time. That is fantastic times. That's a game I still need to get my hands on. Hopefully, at some point, I'll actually get the time to do that. I say that as my desk is just covered in papers. I've got 2 deeps for college football that I'm working on boards for this weekend, and
see, you play the at-home pen and paper NCAA football. That's not really my thing.
It's on the one hand, it may not be as fun, but I do get paid to play this version, so makes it a little more fun. So, yeah, that'll be coming up on Saturday. Some Thomas More football on the Saints Sports Network. But
be there,
or be square. But here we're talking all things nerdy on the Nerdcast Empire, and we're gonna kind of break it down into segments. We're going to start by talking some video game news, and I think the news that everybody is talking about right now is the news about the PS5 Pro. Obviously, this is kind of a mid-way update. It is not a full update. It is supposed to come out on November the 7th. Prices, you're looking at $699.99 USD. $699.99 great GBP pounds, $799 euros or dollars, 799 euros, and 119,980 yen. So that does include tax. It does not include a disk drive, which will run you another $80, and that'll be something else we'll talk about. That those are now becoming hard to come by, but 2 terabyte SSD, DualSense wireless control, and a copy of Astro's Playroom pre-installed in every PS5 Pro purchase. It is a diskless console with the option to purchase the currently available disk drive for PS5 separately. Upgraded GPU, advanced ray tracing, AI-driven upscaling. Those are the marketing points, I guess, if you will, talking about these things. But obviously, if you are online, which if you listen to this podcast, you probably are, it's had a lot of negative backlash. There has been a lot of people talking about this being reminiscent to the PlayStation 3 launch, which may or may not be fair, and I know you're going to get into that, but at the very least, it is something that, like the PS3, really caught people off guard. So we'll start with Mike on this one. I know you've been following this a lot closer than I have. Let's talk PS5 Pro, pros and cons, your thoughts on the news that has come out this week.
First, I think one of the troubling aspects of it is I feel like when they kind of did the presentation for it, they were kind of hyping it as doing things that you kind of wish the PS5 did to begin with. I think some of the performance issues that we've seen, they're addressing it now, but, I already spent a large amount of money to buy the PS5 to begin with. I'm not a fan of these mid-console generation upgrades. I think they're just kind of sketchy. Like, you maybe could have done a little better the first time out, and you didn't. I mean, like you mentioned, it doesn't have the optical drive. That's another $70 or $80. Doesn't even come with a vertical stand. That's $30 added onto it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like Astro's Playroom. That came with the PS5 also. So that's not a selling point. Like, they couldn't have, at the very least, packaged in a game with this to make it maybe a little more enticing. You talk about the comparisons to the PS3 price, because obviously it was fairly overpriced when it came out too, at least looking back. And even Jeff Keighley tweeted something kind of showing the inflation-adjusted prices, how basically the PS5 Pro isn't any more expensive adjusted for inflation as the PS3. But the PS3 was a big step forward. I mean, for a lot of people, it was the best value as far as getting their first Blu-ray players. it played PS1 games. I mean, it had a disc drive. Holy crap. Certain models of the PS3 also played PS2 games. There was so much more to like about it that they've stripped away. Like, if you want to compare prices, compare this to the PS5 discless version, because that's really what it is, just with a few enhancements. It hurts that, not that I won't one day own one of these, but it's going to be way down the road aftermarket. I can't condone this purchase.
Well, at some point, you wonder if you wait long enough, is the PS6 going to come out? You're just going to wait for that because it's probably going to be a similar price point to what you have now. Just to kind of jump on what I was talking about earlier about the disk drives, according to IGN, it's currently sold out at Amazon, Best Buy, and Target. I guess Walmart has some. PlayStation Direct has some as well. Starting to show up on eBay with markups because people know that people are going to be looking to get this. Let's throw it over to Chris. Chris, if I remember correctly, I believe you're more of an Xbox guy than a PlayStation guy, but I am curious to get your thoughts on all the news that's come out about this thing.
Yeah, I'm more of an Xbox guy, but Xbox has this problem as well. I'm not a fan of the kind of midlife returns on these where we're releasing a separate console, and we're getting to a point where I feel like I almost have to take a mortgage out on my house just to afford one of these. And I feel like we've not just gotten to the point, we've long been at the point where what we're getting as far as these extra ray tracing, the graphics, the returns on these investments aren't great enough compared to the games we're playing. I mean, the games that they were showing to demo on the hardware were games that have been out for years already. You're talking about your Ghosts of Tsushima, Ratchet and Clank, Last of Us Part 2. Yeah, these are games that have been out for a while. So is this what you're telling me? You want me to get this new console to play those? Because I mean, I know I have a pretty good back catalog, but do I really need it? I mean, the PS5 in itself, the base one, already resolved some of the issues of the PS4 where it didn't sound like it was taking off like a jet airplane. And I don't have one personally, but I understand that it's handled the new age of games a lot better than its predecessor did. So why do we need to try to fix something that's not broken once again and going to cost you, in some countries, a month and a half's rent, in other countries upwards of 4 times someone's rent, depending on where they're working. So I think it's absurd. I mean, not just for PlayStation, but for any company nowadays, Xbox, Nintendo included.
So at no point playing these games before, you didn't find yourself thinking, man, that water just isn't reflective enough. If only they could do something to resolve that. Because that's deal breaking for me if the water doesn't look realistic to me.
And I think the problem we're now getting to is you can build a pretty good gaming PC for $800, and it has a disk drive, and it has, more power than these gaming systems do. And if you really want to go nuts, like you can build a gaming PC for maybe double that you'll never outgrow in your lifetime. So, it used to be consoles had a bit of an advantage because they were very specified in being your gaming machine, but now they're not really any better than just getting a PC and gaming there, especially like with Xbox, because you have the tie-in with Microsoft where you can kind of play those directly through your PC. So I think the question is, and maybe it's more, we'll see kind of Chris's thoughts on this, but we'll start with Mike. Like, at some point in our lifetime, our game console is going to disappear.
Absolutely. Nintendo will be the last one to go, and it'll probably be a couple generations from now. But once both Microsoft, they kind of were ahead of the curve, and now Sony, once they decided that they're okay with abandoning physical media, you're no longer special compared to a PC.
Right.
Like, there's nothing that my console does necessarily, especially when you start talking about companies like Square Enix who are now porting their stuff, over to Xbox. It's coming, as well as Steam. Like, what's the incentive for me to buy something on PS5 if you don't want me to have a physical copy of it and not just go the Steam route for everything?
Yeah, Chris, curious your thoughts as well. I mean, is this the beginning of the end for console gaming?
I think we're at least starting to hit that bubble. I mean, I know it's been talked about that there's going to be kind of a video game bubble that's going to bust just from the games themselves increasing in price. And now you're, like you mentioned, you're talking about consoles that are well exceeding what you could get from an actual PC. I shudder to think of the day where, these companies go the route of just a Sega or an Atari, and they're almost not talked about anymore, except for maybe some retro consoles that have 500 preloaded games on them.
That's entirely it. And, it kind of goes back to the thing that Mike and I have talked about on this podcast before is it kind of ties into what you see when you open up Twitch, this very platform that we're streaming on, and you look at what games are being streamed on there. So many of them. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of big games being streamed and a lot of the newest games, but there's also Buckshot Roulette, which you can probably buy for a couple bucks and play on your computer. And, there are games that are just the most, I played like that supermarket simulator for a couple weeks. Like, I think it cost me like maybe $5. And it's just, again, it's already on my PC. I'm gaming on my PC. These games that are super popular that people are streaming, it feels like the end is a lot closer than we even realize.
That's the thing, is that when you look at like PS5 and Xbox, years ago they made the decision that they wanted to get as graphically intensive as humanly possible and kind of set themselves up for competition against PC. When before, when we were kids playing Super Nintendo, you didn't have Super Nintendo games on your computer. That just wasn't a thing. The computer had real-time strategy games and turn-based strategy and the Sim City. Like, that was what the PC was for. It wasn't for your video games. They were wholly distinct markets. And I think to some degree Nintendo's been able to hold on to that a little longer because they bucked all the trends. I've mentioned it before, but there was an interview with Satoru Iwata from like around the GameCube generation, basically saying, we could keep making our systems really powerful, but all that's going to do is make the games a lot more expensive to make. They'll be prettier, but they won't necessarily be more fun. The developers won't enjoy it. And basically just said, like, there's no reason for us to keep going on this space race or this arms race when ultimately it should really be about what can we do to create experiences that other companies can't in video gaming. And I think that's where, even in some missteps with Nintendo, like the Wii U maybe not doing as well, every system they've come out with, you felt like had some sort of gimmick that separated them.
Last thoughts on this topic, and I'll throw it to Chris for this, because we talk about it, like, as they add these other features, like, what is really out there left to do? I mean, at some point, you can go 8K, 12K, 240 frames a second. At some point, you're going to hit the wall as to what you can even perceive as an improvement of a game. It's going to be limited by your monitor or your the lag time of your controller or whatever it might be. Like, is there really? I mean, outside of just making more fun games, what is left to do that you can even justify as an upgrade at this point?
Maybe I'm just not deep enough into the industry to understand just new advancements. But like I said, I feel like we've already hit that wall. And a lot more focus needs to be put on these games, because to stave off, becoming irrelevant, at least Sony has had in their back pocket that they have these exclusives. That's what Sony fans go back to every time it's brought up, and kind of a console war talk is we have all these exclusives. Not so much anymore. Like I said, these games they're demoing have been out for a while already. And at this point, if you're not going to lean on the games, what's the point of the hardware that you're playing them on?
Yeah, 100%. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on the story. Obviously, there's a lot more to go, but
just one other thing real quick kind of about that is, I thought Sony had a really cool thing with their VR too for the PS5, but they kind of stumbled with it. They probably overpriced it to begin with, even though the actual technology is amazing. But I don't think when they set out to create it, they thought, once this is out, we need to hurry to figure out a way to create an adapter so people could use it on their PC.
Yeah.
To me, that's a fail. Like, once you had to take that and make it usable on what really is your competition at this point, that's not good.
Yeah, and you see it even in the VTuber space, where you have there are a few VTubers that do the full VR and the headsets and everything, and there are a lot that just have their phone there. Like, I think, while there are some people that will enjoy VR gaming, I think there are a lot of people who maybe the technology kind of makes them sick, or just keeping that on for very long. Like
until they can make Sword Art Online, I think it's always going to be a very niche thing.
Yeah, I think you're right there. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on it. We'll certainly keep tabs on it. But interesting news. Everybody was talking about the PS5 Pro, so I think good chance for us to talk about it as well. Listening to the Nerdcast Empire live on twitch.tv. Matt, Mike, and Chris with you this week. Don't forget to check out our website, nerdcastempire.com. You can, of course, go to our store. You can listen to previous episodes of the Nerdcast Empire. Of course, a big thanks to the 25 followers we have now. We are up to 25. We are halfway to our goal of 50. We really do appreciate that. I need to go back and start refollowing our followers. But we really do appreciate that. And again, if you do nothing more than share our posts on social media, that's a huge help.
But join us live.
Join us live.
Honestly.
Yeah, we try to do Thursdays and Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern. And we try to at least let people know we're going to be changing times. Like today, we were a little bit late because we had a tennis match. Next Thursday, we will not have the show will be moved back a day to Wednesday because I have a soccer broadcast next Thursday, so I will not be home. There'll be a big one in KU Women in Milwaukee, the teams that met in the Horizon League final a season ago. So it'll be a really big game. So we'll be 24 hours early next week for
Milwaukee
Anime Thursday.
has had its share of visitors.
Yes. It's pronounced Milwaukee, which is Algonquin for the good land.
Oh, these guys know how to party or what?
And I try hard not to reference that in every broadcast that when NKU plays Milwaukee, but it is really hard not to do that. And I can only imagine what their fans think when they hear that. But anyway, but yeah, that's where we'll be next week. So let's talk some WWE. And I know Chris maybe hasn't kept up with it as much, but we're certainly happy to have his input where he can. In the meantime, since the last time we did a premium live event, I finished first overall in another Pro Wrestling Scorecard. So I'm up to 3 now, all-time first place finishes. So pretty crazy stuff. Love the guy. Love the Pro Wrestling
Acknowledge
Scorecard.
him.
That's right. I am the OTC, the one true chief or original tribal chief. I'm not sure, but really. We'll talk a little bit about WWE, the main roster product, but I want to get Mike's thoughts, and we can talk a little bit about NXT. To me, it has been, even with Raw and SmackDown improving, and they have improved tremendously, NXT is still the most fun 2 hours of wrestling, or 2 hours and 8 minutes of wrestling you get every week. They're getting ready to debut on the CW coming up on October the 1st. That'll be in Chicago with CM Punk. Of course, on the 8th, they'll be in St. Louis with Randy Orton. They've set a match with Julia taking on Roxanne Perez for the NXT Women's title on that October 1st show. We're going to get a street fight between Zachary Wentz and Wes Lee, which should be a lot of fun. It's going to be big. We've had these crossovers. We just had Alex Hammerstone, fighting Obafemi, who's just a beast if you've not seen him. We're getting a lot of crossovers with Rosemary coming over and being involved in some spooky storylines. And now Jordynne Grace will be defending her TNA Knockouts Championship tomorrow night against Wendy Chu on their event. So it's just this crossover thing has been wild. Joe Hendry had a world title shot. He's been a sensation. Mike, we'll start with you. Thoughts about NXT, thoughts about where they are, and thoughts about where they're going.
Yeah, I wonder what any of the initial naysayers are thinking now, because there was kind of that thought of yeah, they'll have this collaboration, but they're not going to do anything to kind of put TNA over or make them look good. And it's we've had Joe Hendry main event, a takeover, or a premium live event. We had a TNA wrestler win on a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
I just they're doing everything they need to do. Nobody's looking bad in this scenario. They make Jordynne Grace look like the juggernaut that she is. This past episode, it's you see Hammerstone. Hammerstone had a good showing against Obafemi. You just kind of wonder how that guy slipped through the cracks and didn't end up in WWE a few years ago.
Yeah.
But it's wild because, kind of to your point, Raw and SmackDown are doing what they need to do. They are the A and B show of the company. That's fine. NXT is like the weird project show you have that you don't mind doing the most random things and making it super unpredictable, because at the end of the day, it is kind of that other show. And I think in a way, it kind of feels like if WWE ran an independent wrestling promotion, this is what it would do.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, for years before AEW existed, TNA was the other North American wrestling promotion. It was them in WWE. That was it for a while. I mean, yeah, you had Ring of Honor, but they weren't on that same level really. And now you have them working together. It's just it's a wild time.
It is, and you look at some of the guys that have come over from AEW and how much they have been elevated. Obviously, Ethan Page is the world champion in NXT. You've got Lexis King, who's just a menace and is so much fun.
He's a TV star. I mean, just ask Booker T.
That's right, and then you've got Shawn Spears, who has been manipulating people backstage. Like, really, that's gone well. Like, it's just so much fun, and you just don't know where it's going to go. And Shawn Michaels does an amazing job with making all this feel important. And obviously, people will get riled up again because Jordynne Grace is going to end up in WWE when her contract is up. Joe Hendry is probably going to end up in WWE when his contract is up. But, you know, the door kind of rotates and you can continue. I mean, Riley Osborne was in an Ultimate X match. They didn't win, but he was
sure he had a good showing.
Had a good showing. And, you know, you're also getting, and you know, another thing we didn't talk about was Josh Briggs and Tavion Heights going to Japan and being in the N1. And Tavion Heights, I think, opened everybody's eyes. And, of course, he came back this Tuesday night, was impactful in a match. And that dude looks like he's going to be a star now. It's such a wild time. And, Chris, I know you haven't maybe had as much chance to watch NXT, but I guess as a more general overview, like, you've grown up in this era where WWE was in a silo, and it was like WWE does their thing, and they don't do any outside things, and no outside things do anything with them. Like, it's got to be weird, because I know it's weird for us to see all of a sudden now, like, hey, we'll do business with TNA. We'll do business with, Pro Wrestling Noah. And Bloodsport, yeah. You've had Shayna Baszler. You've had the Creeds. You've, have been on Bloodsport. It's got to be a wild time, I'm sure, for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, it got to the point where it still kind of feels almost illegal. I mean, for the longest time, it seemed like we were so dead set that it got to the point where I didn't even speculate, man, it would be so cool if this person came over, because it's like they don't work together. But now we're finally in an era. We've been in this era for a little bit, and it's still kind of astonishing. And NXT, I think, is utilizing it to the best of their ability. I know every now and then you'll post kind of the ratings, just kind of showing how strong they've been, or at least how they keep up at the same level. You don't see these big dips like you do with other promotions. And just the fact that recently they were able to kind of hold their own against a nationwide debate, I think says a lot about the product in itself. And now you've got Motor City Machine Guns coming in, creating arguably like one of the best, if not the best, tag divisions on air, and pair that up with a growing women's division, and it's a much different product than what I grew up with, for sure.
Their women's division's insane. Like, the talent they already have, and you're adding Julia, you're adding Delta, you're adding Stephanie Vacher, who's coming in, and on top of just other people coming in, passing through, like Rosemary coming in for a run, Jordynne Grace coming in for a run.
And their homegrown talent.
Oh, my gosh, so much talent. I mean, we saw Jordynne Grace versus Sol Ruca, which obviously didn't have a finish because Rosemary and Wendy Chu interrupted the match, but that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And, Kalani Jordan doing a great job with the North American title.
Jada Parker is going to be a star.
She is. It was so funny because if you go back, if you're an NXT fan, you didn't pay attention. As they showed the videos of all of the superstars walking in, she was in the background of every one of them with her bat, waiting in the parking lot. Now, they were probably all shot within a 5-minute period, but they were framed as if they were different times of the day, and she's just hanging out in the parking lot waiting for the Fatal Attraction. Is that what's the name?
Fatal Influence?
Fatal Influence, that's it. To come in. So I don't get it's better than Pure Fusion Collective, whatever that is
That's terrible.
It's so bad. They haven't had too many bad faction names, but NXT is still the most fun 2 hours because it's still the one wrestling show every week that you just don't know what's going to happen. And that makes it. And of course, we had the Bloodline this Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And again, as everybody said online, you can't look at Jacob Fatu and the Gorillas of Destiny and not think, that's the faction. These are the guys.
Sikoa kind of sticks out.
And you just can't help but think that after Cody beats Sikoa in the cage match on Friday, that maybe now's the time to dump him.
Yeah.
And, maybe it's time for Hikuleo to show up and just rough him up. And now you've got those four together, and with The Rock potentially like as the shadowy figure behind them.
They got to introduce Hikuleo like they did like the Yeti at the end of the WCW pay-per-view. Like that would be a missed opportunity if they don't do that.
No question, but it's just so much fun.
Well, I think one other thing real quick about kind of it being in a silo, I think for years, Vince McMahon wanted to convince you that they weren't in the same industry as those other companies.
Correct.
So the thought of collaboration made no sense because they don't do this. It'd be like baseball and football collaborating. There's no need for it. They don't do the same thing.
It's so much fun, and it's made. Like I said, NXT is the one show I hate when I miss. Like the other shows, like I can get caught up. They're a lot of fun. And I think, that's the other thing we do want to kind of touch on is, we did the announcement this week that starting in October, Monday Night Raw is going to be 2 hours for the remainder of its run on USA. That was the 3-month period that USA had to pick up because Netflix wasn't starting until January 1st. So they got it, but they're only wanting 2 hours. SmackDown will be 2 hours starting on USA this week. And then, of course, CW for NXT starting October the 1st. And I have a feeling those are going to be big shows with big surprises. I saw Triple H's post on X earlier today talking about the cage match, but then saying, as for the rest of the show, you'll have to wait and see. So definitely teasing some surprises potentially for Friday.
I can't wait to find out what terrible programming is on the CW that I don't watch.
Yeah, it's kind of like the NCAA basketball tournament every year. Like, what is on True TV that I do not ever watch, and now I found out. So, but yeah, wrestling's been a lot of fun. Certainly, we'll be talking more. We'll have another premium live event thing. I mean, who knows? Maybe if there's interest involved, maybe we do a live show after the first NXT on CW on a Tuesday night. So we'll see. We'll figure that out. But that's kind of our wrestling news. And before we move on to the rest of our news, just a reminder of our upcoming schedule. Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, another episode of Music Weekly. Are we on to August 30th, I believe, for the music? Have not had a chance to check it out, but I've seen some of Mike's posts, and I think there's definitely some potential.
There is some music for that day.
Thankfully, last week was a really, really good week. Was a lot of fun. I think we'll have another fun week this Sunday, 7 o'clock Eastern time. And then next week, again, it'll be Wednesday for our anime episode. And we're going to talk fall 2024 anime, I believe, next week. There's a lot of really big shows coming out in the fall, and we will try to break some of those down. Maybe I'll get around to watching some of the summer shows like I need to get caught up on. But we'll talk about that next week. Fall 2024 anime preview here on the Nerdcast Empire. And then we'll be back with another episode of Music Weekly on Sunday, which is going to be a long Sunday for me because it's going to be soccer and then tennis tournament draw and then Music Weekly. It's going to be a full day. We'll have it all for you here on the Nerdcast Empire. So let's talk about a couple of Dragon Ball notes. And the first one came out from Crunchyroll. It was earlier this week talking about a report in Toyo Keizai Online, which is tied to the finance magazine, Weekly Toyo Keizai, talking about the rights of the Dragon Ball franchise following Akira Toriyama's death. Evidently, the rights are very much up in the air. Shueisha, their former editor, Akio Yoku, and Bandai Namco were all in discussions over the future of Dragon Ball. Evidently, it's holding up a Dragon Ball game, I believe, that is not being released. Obviously, the new anime, which we'll talk more about in a minute, is coming out. Dragon Ball Daima, which it does appear to be going forward, so they've at least gotten that settled. But get your thoughts first, Mike. It's something you don't really think about so often because a lot of times when creators pass, that kind of ends it all. But Dragon Ball is just this franchise in and of itself that is clearly going to continue on, and it would be a shame if it kind of gets caught up in the courts as to who's actually in charge of it now.
Yeah, kind of reading through the story, it just makes you think like, man, you never really know how long we're all going to be here. So maybe you be careful with who you make angry, because it kind of seems like Shueisha dumped this Akio Yoku guy, who evidently Toriyama was close with to some degree, because they ended up starting to distribute and develop Toriyama's IPs away from Shueisha, evidently. So that's where kind of this impasse is at now, where it's like who actually owns the rights to it, and you have Bandai Namco obviously needing to know that information as well. But yeah, they said that Toriyama wasn't happy with Shueisha because they removed that guy from the Dragon Ball team, and then a year later he quit. But yeah, it sounds like it could be a mess.
Yeah, throw it to Chris for some thoughts on that. I mean, Dragon Ball is such an institution, not just in Japan, but really worldwide. And it's kind of crazy to see that maybe they're going to deal with some problems and they could potentially impact future game releases and maybe even future animation and movie releases.
Is this going to be an instance where we have Dragon Ball and then Dragon Ball Wolfpack, and I got to pick a side here because
Jack Russell's Dragon Ball, and
Yes.
yeah, I mean it's nice to see that there's potential for it to keep going, but with so many hands in the cookie jar, you fear that any one person could ruin just the view of the IP as a whole. So hopefully it gets sorted out sooner than later, and especially if Sparking Zero gains some decent traction and kind of brings fans back into the Dragon Ball video game realm, they're definitely going to want to follow up on that sooner rather than later.
Well, and of course, that ties us into the news that Crunchyroll has announced that the Dragon Ball Daima anime series will stream on October the 11th, which is the same day it premieres in Japan. We'll see if it leaks out somewhere before that actually happens, which seems to be a current trend. It'll be subtitled in the U.S., Canada, Latin America, including Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, India, and Southeast Asia. Presumably, we'll follow with a dub probably a few weeks after because that's going to make a ton of money.
oh yeah,
I guess the question, we'll start with Chris because I don't know how much you're familiar with the new series. We've talked about it a little bit on the podcast. It's not Dragon Ball GT where like Goku goes back to being a kid, but clearly
a bunch of them do.
A bunch of them do. Like, I don't know, like how much interest do you have in checking this out, Chris?
It borders on those anime where they do kind of a side or a side anime where everybody's little chibi characters.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I just can't bring myself to get into those. So I fear I'm going to have the same issue here. I'm going to try to put on my Dragon Ball fan goggles, my rose-colored glasses on this one. And who knows, maybe I'll watch it and it'll make me completely reinterpret and re-engage in all these other shows that I've skipped over. I know they had a big isekai anime that was all about these smaller kind of chibi versions of Overlord characters and some of these other isekai. So maybe it'll change how I view it, but as of right now, I'm definitely not as excited as I am about other properties for Dragon Ball.
It's interesting. I know Mike has talked for a while about we need to find a show and all of us watch it and talk about it. This might end up being that show just because I have this morbid curiosity as to what this is going to be. Because you did talk about there have been a lot of spin-off shows. There's one I can never think of the name of that's a bunch of like the Fate Stay characters and
oh yeah,
something Quartet, right? Like,
well, there's Isekai Quartet, which is the one like ReZero, Overlord, Konosuba, and Tanya the Evil, I think, are the ones involved in that.
Maybe that's what I was thinking.
There is a Fate one too. It has a weird name. I can't remember what it is. But you had like the Attack on Titan Junior High, I think was one. Others have had. I know Black Clover's had one called like Squishy Black Clover or something to that effect. Others you'll see little shorts kind of at the end of episodes. I know they did that with Shangri-La Frontier, where they kind of introduced like chibi characters right at the end, but yeah, it's a whole thing.
And I mean, a lot of the Japanese voice actors and actresses they've announced are big names in the industry, like Ai Feruz and Yoko Ikasa. Like clearly, they're bringing out the big guns as you would expect for a Dragon Ball franchise. I'm not like super excited for it, but like I said, I do have this curiosity as to what it's going to be, so I kind of want to maybe watch an episode of it and see.
It seems like one that we'll at least have an opinion on after we watch it.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
Yeah, I think so. So we'll keep an eye on that one. I don't know. I still don't know how I feel about that for sure, but I'm sure people will have an opinion on it because it's Dragon Ball, and so we'll definitely, at the very least, let you know what people are saying about it. But other anime news, the Shangri-La Frontier Season 2 is coming back. The series returns on October the 13th. Lisa performing the opening theme, which is Queen. Otoha will be performing the ending theme, Dancer in the Dark Night. Not a show that I've kept up with. I believe you've watched this, correct, Mike?
Yeah.
Your thoughts on season 2 of this coming around?
Yeah, certainly excited for season 2. What caught my attention is that they did bring in Lisa to do the open. It's like I enjoyed the music in the show up to this point, but I feel like Lisa's kind of that next level. Like if Lisa's doing your open, then clearly people think you're a big deal. I haven't heard the ending yet, but I'll be anxious to hear that. Yeah, I mean, the show did a really cool job of creating a game world inside of it. With hard to beat world bosses, secret quests, like kind of just different NPCs, and even the stuff outside of the game world, because this isn't one of those ones where they're trapped in it. So there is the other side where the characters are in the real world. I thought that stuff was really good too. There was an episode that kind of went in and you got to meet a couple of the game developers of the game who were interesting characters. I kind of hope they delve into that more, but yeah, I'm excited to pick back up with this.
Yeah, it does look like a good show. It's not one that I've kept up with. Chris, I don't know if it's one you're familiar with at all. Any thoughts on Shangri-La Frontier coming back?
Yeah, I'm curious from Mike, since he's kind of our resident expert on it, I guess, between us, if you were really expecting kind of a season 2 after watching the first season, because I know it had a lot of praise when it first came out, but at least from my view, it seemed like an interesting story, but I don't know, to my taste, that it sounded like something that I would have expected to go for more than one season. So I guess, did they really handle the world building? I know you mentioned there's at least 2 worlds for them to explore, with the real world and the game world, so I guess that helps, but is this warranted, I guess?
Yeah, I think it is. I wasn't sure going into it either what I was getting myself into, but yeah, the way it's set up, in the first season, you kind of they first started playing this super god tier MMO, and kind of midway through the season, they had the first kind of patch to the game that added new content. So I get the feeling that season 2 is just going to be another one of those, if not kind of a full blown expansion to the game. The main character has kind of a gaming history with a couple of the other main characters. They played other PvP games together. There's the classmate of his that has a crush on him that also plays the game, and she's like some ridiculously high-level character that everyone's kind of afraid of, but she's afraid to talk to him in real life. So there's all sorts of things that they can build on and carry on, probably for another couple seasons, honestly.
But yeah, definitely curious to see how that continues on. So definitely fans of that show going to be really excited about another season of it. What people may not now be excited for is the news that came out about the Berserk franchise. A lot of people have been talking a lot about Studio Eclipse's Berserk the Black Swordsman. It was supposed to arrive in summer 2025. There had been trailers released. In fact, the trailers, I guess, were even dubbed into Japanese in some cases. But the studio involved with Berserk has come flying in. Studio Gaga has basically released a statement saying that they're basically used the IP illegally, and the videos were displayed without permission. And it kind of seems like, barring some sort of resolution or negotiation, that's going to be the end of it. And of course, Chris is our expert all things Berserk, so definitely want to go to him for his thoughts on this. I don't know how much you had seen of the fan trailer or how familiar you were with it, but I know people were really excited for it, and this, I'm sure, going to be disappointing to fans that this could be something that might not end up happening now.
Yeah, I mean, I was really excited for it, just alongside all the other fans. I mean, you've got Kentaro Miura, who passed away over 3 years ago at this point. Previous adaptations, I mean, still the best adaptation, I think, was from the 90s, but even then you had some 3-part films in 2012, and then some heavily panned anime in 2016 and 2017, the CGI stuff. So it's been at least 6-7 years since we've had some sort of adaptation in any official sense. So to have a group of dedicated fans that have been working on this for quite a while, and from the trailers I've seen, it looks very well done, or at least competent. And so it was going to satiate that Berserk hunger, I guess, for the fans that have been just left hungry for so long. I mean, this is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, manga to ever be written, and it's just crazy that it doesn't really have a full adaptation from front to current day. A lot of the openings have been redone time and time again, but it's like why there's so little that we actually get to watch. So I'm kind of curious why it took the official publisher to make a statement until now, and it's strange that they're not necessarily being like right up in their face about we're going to go after you if you keep doing this. It's more of just, hey, here's an announcement. We know what you're doing. We're calling out your X account and your website, and you're doing this without permission. The ball's in your court. As far as I know, the fan group hasn't made a statement yet, but it's sad to see, and it kind of makes me want to look if there have been any instances where, I mean, this is, if you weren't planning on doing a production officially, why not reach out and work in some official capacity with this fan group? I mean, they clearly seem competent in what they're doing, like I said. So why don't you pull them in, maybe get some people that actually work for you or have worked with you on some of these anime adaptations, and release a product for the fans. I mean, release something in Kentaro Miura's honor. I mean, we're still getting Berserk, but it'd be nice to just get some kind of update on the anime.
Yeah, it's a great perspective, again, from a true Berserk fan. Of course, you can listen to a previous episode of our podcast. I would have to look and see what episode that was, but Chris really gave you a very good explanation of Berserk and why it's so important to him, and I think everybody should go back and listen to that. To me, there's two sides to the story here. There's the one side where, yeah, it would be wonderful if this company, by just, like he said, kind of pointing out that they're aware of it, but not like we're filing lawsuit tomorrow. Hopefully they see that there was a lot of interest in it, and maybe they can come together and say, okay, let's figure out how to do this together. So we're still making the money off of it. You're not just doing this on your own and pocketing the money, but at the same time allow you to pay homage and create a new series and get people excited for the franchise again, which could, in a time where everybody's doing reboots, why not do something? So there's that side of it, obviously. Then there's the pragmatic side. If you take the fandom out of it, and it's like, there's probably not a country on earth that protects this IP like Japan. Like Japan, you play 2 seconds of an anime theme and all of a sudden they want to nuke your whole channel. Like, they don't have the fair use in Japan. It's really difficult. I would wonder if the pushback, if it was an American-based show, would be as great. There would be some, probably, because everybody wants to protect their IP, but I think it would be less so. So when you start soliciting donations to do this fan project, and now it's a situation where I don't know how much money they're going to make. Maybe it's just to cover expenses. But at the same time, when you're bringing in money to use IP that's not only not yours, but it's Japanese, you're risking them coming after you. So I see two sides of the coin here. It's definitely interesting. Mike, I'm curious your thoughts on it.
Yeah, that's a difficult one because it's one thing to create a trailer, if nothing else, to use kind of as a portfolio to say, hey, look what we could do if you gave us license to use your characters.
Yeah.
Look what we could create. I think that could be really cool, and it could get them in the door in creating something. But I think once you kind of take that next step and you say, we're really making this, and you start bringing in donations, I think that's a risk that you could very well be wasting a lot of time should the hammer come down. I think the other thing to consider, and hopefully this might be a silver lining in it, is that if the rights holders are looking at this and saying, yeah, we don't want you doing that, maybe that could point to possibly them wanting to do something with the license moving forward and not wanting that competition from some other party using the character licenses.
And the hope is maybe that the fact they took notice of it, and the fact that clearly there was enough online buzz for it, and the fact that they're jumping in almost immediately after this company said, hey, we're going to do something, maybe there is hope that hey, cooler heads can prevail. We can get lawyers together. We can figure this out. You can still get this project made, but you're going to get the official blessing of the Japanese. And, that can happen. I think, more likely to happen is they'll just say, no, you're not using it, and we're not using it either, and it's just going to die because Japan is sometimes a little stubborn on those sorts of things. But you hope, because I get it, and kind of want to go to Chris for some final thoughts on it. you've got a show that's so beloved. It has such a loyal following to this day. And, it's funny, one of the comments I saw on Anime News Network is they were like, they should just disavow the 2016 version and create this one instead, because there was a lot of negative thoughts about it. But you have this fan base that sits there and watches Urusei Yatsura come back, watches Ranma 1/2 come back, watches Rurouni Kenshin come back.
In a lot of ways, faithful to the original.
Yeah.
Even in the art direction, it wasn't CGI. I mean, there was Trigun Stampede, but,
that was at least a different adaptation. It was off of different source material than the original Trigun. And so you see all these other fan bases that have been waiting. Sailor Moon got a new series. Cardcaptor Sakura got a new series. And you're sitting there thinking, hey, where's our new series? And then somebody comes out and says, hey, we're going to do this thing. And you get all excited. And now it may be pulled out from under you. Chris, your kind of general thoughts on that as you've kind of had to sit there and watch so many other, and rightfully so, not to shoot at those others' fan bases, but the fact that everybody else seems to be getting theirs, and Berserk fans who are very loyal seem to now have to maybe watch what could have been something really cool get pulled away from them.
Yeah, and I mean, in some of these cases, you've got anime that have had all of their story already adapted, so they're to a point actually making up their own series. So the thought that there's so much out there that Berserk could be doing. I mean, not to say that I necessarily want them to go off of the canon script, but if they could ever reach a point where they were caught up and they covered all the story that's already out there, you have that available. You can make your own side stories or try your hand in a live action adaptation. You've already went the CGI route and maybe it didn't go well, but hey, at least it lowered expectations, I guess. But there's so much out there that they could be doing, but at the same time, first we got to get through what's already out there, and it's so available and just ready, and I don't understand. It just feels like they're just flushing money down the drain, I guess, or holding on to money, I guess would be a better saying. I don't get it.
Feels like the monkey's paw for like, hey, we're gonna readapt One Piece. Oh, but here's the trade off. Like, we're gonna take this one away from you. So. It's kind of crazy. But.
It's funny to me though, because it's like the public opinion has shifted so far away from protecting the company and the rights holders too, and I assume it has something to do with there being just too many, and not so much in anime, but in entertainment in general, so many lackluster reboots and continuations where it's just like, we don't care if you own it or not. If someone's gonna make something cool, we want to see it.
And I kind of get that. I kind of understand, whether it's video games, whether it's anime, whether it's Western media. Like, I kind of understand, because a lot of times the fans are the ones that actually are going to keep the true story together, whereas these companies that are just looking to make money off of them, they don't really care what the fans think. They just want to create this thing. I mean, ask Star Wars fans. I think there are a lot of them will tell you that as well. So. But hopefully it gets resolved peacefully. I think the fact that they've come out, they didn't just immediately go to court. Maybe there's some hope for that project. We'll certainly keep an eye on it as we move forward. So just about ready to wrap up our news episode of the Nerdcast Empire. Chris, you got any final thoughts on any of our topics this week?
No, I mean, just happy to be back, get back into fray of things. I'm hoping I can get back to streaming a little bit more, get more into the game world, anime world, wrestling, maybe rack up a couple more wins on our scorecards. But it's great to be back today, and hope we can continue here.
Absolutely. And we thank Chris not only for joining us, but also, all of his work he's done on our Discord, which will be going live soon, also in the chat each and every week. So we're always happy to have him on live, but we're also happy that he helps us out a lot behind the scenes as well on the Nerdcast Empire. Mike, your final thoughts?
Yeah, cool having Chris back, obviously. I want to shout out one of my favorite bands right now, Mothman and the Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
Picked up their CD from their Bandcamp, came with a lot of cool stickers, and this photo of the Loch Ness Monster. So if you're into good music and cryptids, definitely check out their album, Portal Hopper. Definitely worth a listen. Yeah, that's all I got.
Shout out to Igor Lapo, too, who you emailed with a little bit.
Had a little correspondence with him. His album's tremendous as well. So, yeah, always good to find new music. And if you're looking for more, join us on Sundays.
Yeah, join us on Sundays. We'll be back Sunday, 7 o'clock Eastern for another episode of Music Weekly. And that allows me to put up the schedule thing, which is going to allow me to start playing the outro of the Nerdcast Empire. And great to have Chris back again. Great to have everybody join us, whether you join us live on Twitch or on the VOD on Twitch or YouTube or on our podcast version. We really appreciate you wherever you are. Follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Nerdcast Empire. We're live at least twice a week. We basically do our podcast live. We'll be continuing to do more stuff as we go forward. We're looking to get to that 50 follower mark, so hopefully we'll be able to get monetized and be able to do more cool things here on the Nerdcast Empire. Again, coming up Sunday night, another episode of Music Weekly, August the 30th, will be what is on tap for this Sunday, 7 o'clock Eastern Time on the Nerdcast Empire live on Twitch. And then next week, Wednesday, will be our anime episode, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern, Anime Wednesdays. We're going to be talking about fall 2024 anime. Looking forward to another new season of great shows. What is going to be that big show for fall 2024? We'll talk about that next week. And then, of course, we'll continue with our post-premium live events. Bad Blood coming up in early October. Maybe even we'll talk about the NXT debut on the CW. So a lot of great stuff coming your way here on the Nerdcast Empire. We hope you will join us for all of it. And for Chris and Mike and our entire crew and everybody who's joined us live, I'm Matt Sexton saying so long. Don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.